whether it's A Course in Miracles from the beautiful reading we heard this morning from Renee, or the intention ceremony from Ernest Holmes, from our beautiful musicians, Ginger, here this morning. So I'm going to turn this over to Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So, CCL, I'm going to challenge you this morning a little bit. I'm going to ask that you stretch yourself to understand what I want to share with you before the ceremony. The ceremony is very short. I invite you to say yes or no to the ceremony. Your yes and your no are equally powerful. That's part of what I want to share with you. So you've been warned. The challenge is this. My challenge to you is that you may not have an idea of what love is. More precisely, I suggest you have no idea how big and how powerful an idea it could be in your life. That is to say, whatever you think it is, it could become more important to you if you expand the idea of what it is to you. I suggest that in ordinary parlance, we've made love this small thing without necessarily recognizing. What I want to suggest to you is that love is not affection. Love is not, I really, 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 really like. Spiritual life requires that we take love to the next level. That's what I'm asking of you. I tell you, if love were affection, well, it's just, you all know I have a grandchild, right? Granddaughter, to be more specific. If you ask me to love my neighbors like I love her, my neighbors are a huge trouble. This is not spiritual growth. They're just doomed. They're just done. Love is a term we use often, but do we question ourselves what it means when we say that? The French don't have a problem that we have in English. I say, in English, I love my lover, and she loves me. Now, you all understand what I mean when I say that. So would a Frenchman, I think. Now, if I say, I love ice cream, you here speaking English have a pretty good idea what I mean by that, too. But a Frenchman might think that's a little kinky. Let's look at loving God for a moment. God is another abstraction we often limit in our minds. One of my favorite things that Meister Eckhart had to say to us, he said, God is not good, else he could be better. In a few words, he showed how we've taken a word and we smashed it down to something and made it in essentially something it is not and cannot be. We do that with the word love as well. The Old Testament repeatedly says, love thy neighbor. Does that mean my neighbor and my granddaughter stand together in my mind? Probably not. I seem to have a choice to either make love small so it can somehow fit the occasion here. Oh, I love my neighbor. I love my neighbor. I have to shrink my granddaughter down a little bit here to make them the same. The other option is to find an understanding that can be all-inclusive, that excludes neither, yet honors both somehow. And affection does not work here. So what is love? If it is not affection, what is it? I think this is where we're talking about the expansion of our minds. Okay? My point is, if we don't really seriously take a look at what we mean by love, we are stifling unnecessarily our own spiritual growth, because there isn't a spiritual practice I know that doesn't include the idea of it. Now, I'm a Course in Miracles guy, so I'm going to tell you one of my favorite phrases on the subject in the Course in Miracles. The opposite of love is fear. But what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. Now, if you listen to that, it's very similar to what Meister Eckhart said. God's not good, else she could be better. He didn't actually say it that way, but we understand. What we think of as love in the ordinary sense, the Course in Miracles calls special love. What the Course teaches about love is that love is God. Now, you've heard that before, but if you've been following along with me, we need to talk a little bit about what that means now. Because really, like doesn't work here as far as the idea of what God is. If we are willing to look at both and expand our idea about both, it's important, because that has everything to do with our idea about who and what we are. And I'll get to that. The Course teaches that God is oneness. It teaches that the love of God is no different than God's self. Well, if God is oneness, what else could be true but that statement? When I say the love of God, I mean the nature of God's love, in which there can be no opposite, or there's no non-love, there's no not love possible. The idea of non-difference here, think of love as the idea of non-difference as it applies to you. Make it personal. Love is the willingness or the choice to see the other as somehow connected with what you are. Love is a choice to consider the possibility of your shared divinity without evidence that's apparent to you. Indulge me for a moment. A little thought exercise. Einstein did it. We can do it. I want you to take one hand, either hand, if you will, and hold it just above your head and look at it. Now, whatever you think of your hand, you know enough to recognize that it is somehow connected to your knee, but you can't see your knee right now. yet you are clear that it is connected to you, and you can put your hands down. Now, suppose we train our minds to do the same thing with our neighbor, to see that shared divinity when it's not apparent. This doesn't mean he has permission to run over the flowers in your garden. No, I'm not talking about love being, I loved him, so it's all right that he ran over the flowers in my garden. No. I'm not talking about I love them and they sometimes get angry and abuse me, but that's all right because I love. That's not love. The love of God, which is what I'm talking about, is quite abstract. But we can aspire to reach towards it. We can practice daily to expand our minds, the idea of what it means. Okay? I'm going to suggest to you that love is the willingness to reach to expand, to include, and identify beyond the skin of your body the divine, the shared divinity of what is before you. It is the real meaning of the phrase namaste. We've all heard it. It is a recognizing of your selfhood beyond the body you sit in. So that's what I am challenging with. The idea to carry this idea, I'd like you to carry with you wherever you go and reflect on it. No matter who cuts you off in traffic or speaks rudely to you. You'll find the space inside yourself expands. And in fact, I have to tell you, you've witnessed this kind of love right here in this room. Our beloved pastor stood before us and shared how she identified with two peoples, not persons, peoples that chose to damage and hurt one another in vicious ways. Her feeling for them was far beyond, oh, I really like the Palestinians. I really like the Palestinians. I really like the Israelis. She shared her divine identity with these two groups who had chosen to hurt and damage one another. They both, in a very real sense, belong to her. This is what the term all-encompassing means. I'm challenging you today because you've witnessed it. So, well, we're blessed to have a demonstration such as that. Let's not waste it. Let's try to learn from it and expand our idea of who and what we are. That's what the course is about, by the way. That's what spiritual practice is about. That's what science of mind is about. That's actually what all spiritual religions are about, though it's not necessarily apparent always. I'm asking you to give yourself the space to connect with your divine limitlessness by practicing this idea of what love is. Before I do that, though, I send you out into the world with that crazy idea to try on for yourself to see if it works. That's the idea. Don't just believe what I'm saying. I want to prepare you so that you have a little more space inside to realize that there's space inside. One of the challenges we have when we grow up is that the world teaches us how small we are. It usually starts with our special relationships, our parents. It doesn't have to be our parents, though. It could be an uncle or an aunt who said something that made us feel shrunken because they want you to be safe in this world. Child, you can't just go out there and blah, blah, blah. And I said to you when I've spoken to you before, these are not the problems. These words are not the problems. The problem shows up when we say yes to these words. I shared with you an incident with my mother where I no longer said yes to her limiting belief about me. I allowed her to have the limiting belief without saying yes to it. I no longer said yes to it to me as a result. There's another possible metaphor to use here. Perhaps our special relationships are sent to us to say, well, tell you what, when we go down into this particular incarnation, I'm going to have you yell at me that I'm stupid until you say, no, I'm not. You'll believe it initially because you'll respect me in the situation we're going to set up. But, eventually you're going to say, that's not true. I said, well, do you really love me enough to stand there and yell at that until I get it? Yeah, I do. Sometimes that's the special relationships we're talking about, okay? That's maybe their job to yell something that's not true till you recognize that it's not true. So, this ceremony is very short. You have my full permission to say no to it, because your no is just as powerful as your yes. It is to remake the intent to accept yourself in a loving way. So, we'll begin by me asking you to close your eyes if you say yes to this ceremony. If you say no, that's fine. I want you to close your eyes and see for yourself anywhere, anyone has said you are limited in any way and you said yes to it. Could be any figure in your life, any mentor, anyone you regarded. And it was usually a hurtful experience, so you'll know the one. It almost doesn't matter, but visualize that person standing before you now. And I want you to say, either quietly to yourself or out loud, these words. Forgive me if I have ever used your words against myself. If this has occurred, I choose instead to accept them another way. I no longer choose to use any anger or hurt to distract me. From the divine purpose of your words, which is an experience of our shared divinity. I no longer choose to use any anger or hurt to distract me from the divine purpose of your words, which is an experience of our shared divinity. I thank you for your choice to play that role in my life. And in this most powerful way. I know that God's love is the only lesson you are capable of teaching. You are my teacher. Your presence in my life is no accident. I am grateful for your commitment to play your loving part in my freedom. Thank you. Open your eyes. So, you're now challenged. You've seen the demonstration right here in this room. You had the idea, a challenging abstraction to hold on to. Go with God's love. And so it is.